Revealed, crippled husband's amazing transformation after his cheating wife left for another man. Tom sat in his wheelchair on the porch of his childhood home, the world outside cast in the sweltering Texas sun, the local football field standing eerily silent, not a whistle or cheer to be heard. A place once bursting with glory now echoed with memories of glory days that crumbled like the paint on the picket fence. He couldn't help but run his fingers over the engraved nameplate that read Coach Tom, a title that felt foreign now, a relic of a life he once owned. Trapped within this body that no longer felt like his own, the truth clawed at him. She had walked away, leaving him with more than just physical wounds. His wife, Sarah, once the unwavering cheerleader, had found refuge in the arms of a handsome businessman, a man whose polished charm contrasted starkly with Tom's rugged dedication. How could she? The betrayal cut deeper than the shallow slurs whispered by townsfolk. They stared, judged, and silently wondered if he was broken beyond repair, dismissing him as a fading memory. Tom's mind spiraled between rage and despair. Every glance at Sarah, every moment spent reliving the argument that tore them apart, twisted the knife in his gut. Had he failed as a husband? As a coach? How could he fix himself when he was so painfully aware of the ways he had been left behind? His identity shattered like the dreams he once harbored. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. Each step down this unfamiliar path weighed heavily on his heart, threatening to crush any flicker of hope. The community he had once inspired began to murmur, their sympathy replaced with judgment. Tom, the crippled coach, devoid of direction, leadership, or purpose. Yet, sitting on that porch, the bitterness slowly churned into something else, a spark of determination. Conversations with his father ignited an idea that wormed its way through his despair: adaptive sports coaching. The thought shocked him. Could he really turn this loss into something transformative? Could the pain become a platform for something greater? He envisioned a team of young athletes, each struggling against their own battles, just like him. The prospect inflamed his spirit, but with it came an avalanche of doubt. He questioned his value. Could he lead a group of disabled athletes when he could hardly navigate his own body? The fear clawed brutally at the edges of his resolve. As the season of preparation began, he poured everything into this new project, finding fragments of himself in each young athlete's story. Their resilience illuminated his darkest corners and forced him to confront painful truths. Yet each practice, each slight setback, reminded him of society's prejudice, threads that bound everyone together while isolating him. The day of the championship loomed closer, and anxiety wrapped around Tom like a vice. Emotions tangled, pride fought for space with dread. Amid this chaos, in a cruel twist of fate, he spotted Sarah among the crowd with her new beau, laughter spilling from her lips, their eyes brushing against his in haunting recognition. In that heartbeat, everything inside him lurched. How could he face her? How could he confront the woman who had once been his world? Questions flooded his mind. Could he forgive her betrayal? Was he truly transformed, or was he still just the man she left behind? A storm brewed inside him, emotions brewing and squeezing him into an overwhelming knot of despair, igniting a deep sensation of loss that threatened to consume him whole. The moment stretched unbearably as he prepared to confront the life he had dared to reclaim. Tom's breath hitched as he held Sarah's gaze, a mere flicker of recognition igniting a tempest within him. The laughter that floated from her lips echoed mockingly in his ears, a haunting melody barely masking the bitter truth of their fractured relationship. He wheeled back slightly, as if the air between them had thickened into an unscalable wall. Her presence was both a beacon of longing and a reminder of his deepest failure. Every muscle in his body tensed, shadows from the past collapsing into the present. How could he compete with the polished attraction of the man beside her? The specters of insecurity clawed at him, and although he focused on the athletes who had come to trust him under his guidance, the betrayal flared like a wildfire. "Focus, Tom," he muttered under his breath, forcing himself to redirect his thoughts. The athletes were warming up on the field, their laughter intermingling with his turmoil, but it was a purpose he clung to for them and, inadvertently, for himself. He reassured himself that he had a mission to uphold, one that extended beyond personal grief. Tom was not merely a coach. He had the opportunity to be a mentor, offering support to those navigating lives marked by struggles much like his. As the whistle blew, he guided the young athletes through drills, the cadence of their movements resonating as much with him as the rhythm of his heart. "You all have strength that isn't defined by your circumstances," he shared, his voice steady, warming into conviction. Every drill became more than physical exertion. It was a testament to a shared journey fraught with determination. But with his every word, the lingering thoughts of Sarah haunted him. How was he to lead when his own heart remained fractured? In a fleeting moment, he glanced over to the sidelines, catching Sarah's eyes again, her expression caught between admiration and pity. Anger surged within him, igniting a fierce resolve. He refused to be a figure of sympathy anymore, a mere shadow of what he used to be. By the end of the practice, exhaustion washed over him, but the adrenaline had awakened something profound. Tom recognized the change brewing beneath the surface. This coaching was as much about healing himself as it was about guiding others. In the following weeks, he invested himself fully into adaptive coaching, every session sharpening his focus and consuming his doubts. Plans formed in his mind: events, competitions, ways to bring greater visibility to their achievements. He poured the memories of lost friendships and aspirations into the framework of something larger, seeking to reshape his identity. Yet, every interaction with Sarah felt like walking a tightrope, stranded between emotional escalation and self-actualization. The confrontation he feared loomed in the distance like a storm cloud gathering momentum. He knew they needed to speak, and the weight of that truth hung like an albatross around his neck. On the morning of the championship, Tom wore his determination like armor, his heart thrumming with anticipation and dread. The stands were packed, murmurs of encouragement flooding the air as he pushed himself to the front lines, ready to deliver a heartfelt address. He felt a strange balance between fear and empowerment, battling the pressure of the moment as he prepared to speak. As he scanned the crowd, he locked eyes with Sarah again, who stood there, a mixture of curiosity and concern written plainly on her face. The instant unfolded with a magnetic tension, raising a spectrum of emotions: frustration, passion, longing, and fury. Tom raised the microphone to his lips, ready to bridge the chasm left by their past. A moment of truth awaited. Whatever lay ahead, he understood that confronting Sarah wouldn't just settle the scars of their history. It would be a chance to redefine his future. The tension in the air escalated as he began. Today is about more than just competition. And in that moment, the fragile tendrils of his new reality began to weave themselves around him, promising a path to reclamation or, perhaps, a reckoning that neither he nor Sarah could predict. The words hung in the air, palpable and charged. Tom's voice trembled slightly as he continued, the adrenaline enhancing his clarity. "It's about resilience, about overcoming the limitations that life imposes on us." The eyes of the crowd bore into him, some filled with hope, others with skepticism, but all were caught in the web of his sincerity. As he spoke, he felt the tension between him and Sarah shift. For a fleeting second, her expression softened, making him wonder if she still recognized the man she once loved, the man who fought against hardships and questioned his very worth. The muted sounds of the audience faded. It was just Tom, Sarah, and the overwhelming need to be understood. Today, we celebrate not just our wins, but the journey we've all taken to get here, including the hurdles we've faced. Each word was deliberate, each sentence a step toward the truth he had avoided for so long. His hope surged as he articulated the importance of vulnerability, the courage it took to admit one's failures and learn from them. The competitive atmosphere fueled him. As he transitioned from his personal struggle to highlight the athlete's efforts, Tom's heart raced. He wanted them to see their potential as vividly as he now saw his. You are the embodiment of perseverance, and no matter the outcome, your stories have already won. That was the crux, the heart of it all. He was not merely teaching, he was healing alongside them. Tom stole another glance at Sarah. This time, a flicker of understanding shone in her gaze, but lingering doubts plagued him. Was she pitying him, or was she finally starting to comprehend the transformation he fought so hard to achieve? The question gnawed at his resolve, but he pushed it aside, channeled into the moment at hand. As he concluded, a flood of applause erupted, engulfing him in warmth. Yet, amid the congratulatory noise lurked a chilling finality. The championship might feel like a victory, but the real battle lay ahead. Tom's heart clenched with the weight of what was to come. Later that evening, the adrenaline high gave way to an unsettling realization. Disappointment hung around him like a fog. The past day of triumph felt like a masquerade, masking the raw reality he still had to confront. It was there, in the quiet of the night, that he recognized his next step, a confrontation with Sarah, one that could either fortify his transformation or unravel everything he had worked for. As he paced his apartment, thoughts tumbling in tumult, Tom recognized the conflict within. Could he embrace the truth without unraveling the newfound stability he was slowly building? Or would facing her, confronting the pain, offer him a greater resolution, a final chapter to a long, haunting narrative? The decision weighed heavily on him. He could orchestrate a soothing, amicable conversation where he could deflect the consequences of his actions, or he could ignite a raw dialogue that might expose his weaknesses. Would he choose vulnerability or cling to the remnants of self-preservation? With every thought, his pulse quickened. The hour was growing late. He could feel the darkness gathering around him like an unwanted shroud. The heaviness in his chest demanded attention, urging him to make a move. Time was slipping away. The phone vibrated against the table. The stark intrusion jolted him. It was a message from Sarah, simple yet loaded. "Can we talk?" Tom stared at the screen, each letter a challenge, each word beckoning him to unravel the truth they both deferred for too long. The road ahead remained unpredictable, lined with uncertainty, but it was a journey he no longer could avoid. Now, with his heart racing against the ticking clock, he understood he stood at a crossroads, one direction toward the familiar anguish, the other toward the uncharted territories of healing. He inhaled deeply, aware that the truth could be as liberating as it was terrifying. The moment had come to face his past and perhaps uncover a future that awaited, shaped by the outcomes of their confrontation. Tom's phone vibrated again, the screen glowing like a beacon in the dimness of his apartment. Each pulse matched the frantic rhythm of his heart, drawing him toward an inevitable engagement. Sarah's message lingered in the air, thick with implications. This was the moment he had anticipated yet dreaded, a moment where his resolve could either cement his growth or dismantle it completely. He felt a clash of emotions, a mix of fear and determination. This conversation meant peeling back layers he had only just begun to fortify. Would honesty build bridges, or would it cast him back into the shadows of regret? As he paced, he felt the weight of his own past decisions pressing heavily against his chest. Tom took a deep breath and summoned his courage. The stakes were high. He wasn't just confronting Sarah. He was facing the very essence of who he had become in her absence. The monster of his insecurity was still lurking beneath the surface, whispering doubts and fears. Would she still see the man she had left behind, or would she notice the strides he had made toward becoming someone he could respect? He made a decision. Instead of waiting for her to come to him, he drafted a quick reply. Yes, where and when? The message shot off into the digital ether, leaving him vulnerable, yet a flicker of empowerment ignited within him. This was a step toward taking control of his narrative. Within moments, she responded with a location and time, a small, quiet coffee shop he had often frequented during their broken relationship. The memories flooded back, the laughter, the arguments, the quiet moments spent together. Each recollection simultaneously filled him with nostalgia and dread. How could they navigate to the future while trudging through the remnants of their past? Hours passed achingly slowly until he finally found himself in the familiar cafe. The cozy ambience, once inviting, now felt like an invisible cage, walls closing in as he waited for her arrival. He sipped his coffee slowly, hoping it would calm his racing thoughts, but nerves twisted in his gut. When Sarah finally walked in, his breath hitched. Her presence was striking. She still held that same magnetic quality that once drew him in. This time, however, she bore an expression that was soft yet guarded, a combination he couldn't quite decipher. Their eyes met, and in that brief moment, a silent acknowledgement passed between them. She was as anxious as he was, and for the first time, he could see the human beneath the title of the cheater. Was she still the woman who betrayed him, or had that moment been a fracture in time that both had to learn from? As they settled into their seats, the space between them felt charged, almost electric. Tom's mind scrambled, searching for the right words, an opening but also a defense. The barista floated by, serving coffee, but Tom was unfocused, his thoughts tangled. He could feel the love they once had still simmering under the surface, yet it was now mixed with sharp edges of betrayal and regret. Tom, Sarah's voice broke the stillness, pivotal and intimate. I wanted to reach out because I've thought a lot about us. About everything. Those words were a spark. They ignited the possibility of a dialogue that had the potential to heal or utterly destroy them both. Tom swallowed hard, preparing to lay bare his truths while wrestling with the uncertainty of what that could mean for his burgeoning transformation. Me too, he replied, the weight of simplicity heavy with emotion. He steadied himself, discovering purpose amidst chaos. It was his turn to take the reins of this discussion, to forge ahead into the uncharted territories that lay before them. With each word they exchanged, he realized a question still lingered, waiting to unfurl itself. Did he still want her in his life, and what price was he willing to pay for acceptance in return? The answer hovered tantalizingly close, yet utterly elusive. As they began to peel back the layers of their shared history, Tom sensed that this conversation could be the penultimate moment of reckoning. The air thickened with unresolved questions and potential resolutions, a world defined not by the past, but by the futures they could carve out together as long as they were willing to face the truth head-on. His heart raced at the possibility of acceptance, penance, or perhaps even a fresh start. But beneath that raced another pulse of dread, the nagging, unsettling thought. Would he find closure, or would this conversation shatter his aspirations of healing, sending him spiraling back into darker depths? The tension hung between them like a thick fog laden with unexpressed emotions. Tom could feel his heart pounding as he prepared to confront the layers of betrayal and longing that intertwined their relationship. Each heartbeat echoed the fear of losing his hard-earned progress, the transformation he had fought for since their separation. I've been thinking about how we left things, he started, choosing his words with careful precision. But it's hard to parse through that time without feeling overwhelmed by anger or hurt. Sarah nodded, her gaze steady but reflective. I understand. It's not easy to reconcile. I wish I could go back and fix things, but that won't change what happened. We both changed, haven't we? The implications behind her words struck deep. It was not just about the hurt, but also the growth that stemmed from it. A flicker of something akin to hope sparked within Tom as he braced himself for the truth he wanted to uncover. What I want to know, he began, his voice gaining strength, is what led you to that decision. Shattering everything we built took more than just a moment of weakness. He was surprised by the calm in his tone, an indicator of the clarity he had sought. She took a breath, visibly contemplating the weight of his question. It wasn't one thing. I felt trapped, lost in expectations of myself, of you. I thought maybe finding someone else would validate me in ways I couldn't do myself. The vulnerability in her admission held an undeniable gravity. Tom could identify with that overwhelming sense of entrapment, a sentiment he had battled during their time together. Her honesty offered a strange form of kinship, as if they were standing on opposite sides of the same chasm. Being with you was the highlight of my life, and yet I often felt inadequate. Did you ever think to share that with me? She looked down, shame creeping into her posture. No, I avoided it. I thought distancing myself would help, but instead, it drove me to someone else. Her voice trembled now as she met his gaze again. I regret that. I truly do, Tom. The twist of his heart revealed more than forgiveness. It echoed with the pang of empathy. We can't change the past, he said, the resilience in his voice shifting his own doubts. But we have to decide what we want now. Can this be a part of our story moving forward? Sarah's eyes glistened, and Tom feared the answer would be filled with disappointments he was not ready to confront. I want to believe that we can. But I don't know if I'm still the person you can trust or rely on. Trust. The word hung between them, saturated with the weight of its definition, and Tom felt the precariousness of their situation swell. A notion ignited there lay the gateway to self-discovery. Maybe the better question is, are we willing to rebuild trust together? That's the foundation we need if we're considering a future. Silence enveloped them for a moment, thick like the years spent apart. Questions loomed unasked, challenging Tom's burgeoning belief that he could evolve beyond these origins of tumult and turbulence. I want to try, she finally said, vulnerability intertwining with tentative hope. With you and with myself. He felt a warmth spread through him at her admission. It was tempting to close his heart off, a protective mechanism born from previous wounds, yet the truth was more potent than fear. He recognized the cracks in their foundations could serve as a catalyst for forging something unbreakable, a test of their true resilience. Perhaps they could emerge stronger, learning from the scars instead of being confined by them. Then let us take it step by step, he proposed, feeling a newfound determination pulsate within him. Let's not rush into what was or what might be, but start with honesty and commitment to show ourselves and each other the integrity that was missing before. As they began to map out what this journey of rebuilding might look like, Tom's doubts began to dissipate, replaced by an exhilarating sense of agency. The path was uncertain, but for the first time, the possibility of redemption shimmered at the edge of their collective pain, inviting them to move forward. But lingering beneath the surface was the relentless question that harrowed him still. What if the ghosts from their past decided to haunt them in ways they hadn't foreseen? The thought gripped him, urging him to prepare for the challenges that lay ahead. They had both embarked on a fragile endeavor, one that could just as easily uplift as it could unravel. Would this tentative dance lead to healing or fracture them once again? The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden light over the room, an unexpected warmth in the charged atmosphere. Tom sat in silence, contemplating the enormity of the task ahead. It was disorienting. The same person who had caused him profound hurt now stood across from him, a glimmer of hope shining through the shadow of their past. Step by step, he repeated softly, almost as if to reinforce this mantra to himself. The thought of rebuilding trust was daunting. Could they really weave their lives together again after such a rupture? Let us start with the basics, he suggested, trying to steady his racing thoughts. If they were to reconstruct their relationship, they needed solid groundwork. What do you need from me moving forward? Sarah hesitated, her expression shifting as she processed his question. I need honesty. I need to feel that you're really present, not just physically but emotionally. It's easy to withdraw when things get tough. Her gaze was unwavering, and for the first time, Tom noticed the softness in her eyes, bridging the gulf that had formed between them. I can do that, he replied, determination igniting within him. Yet, uncertainty clawed at him. The past had introduced a new kind of darkness he hadn't anticipated, and he was acutely aware that the road ahead could lead to both joy and despair. What about you? She countered, her brow furrowing in genuine curiosity. What do you need from me? He took in her question, realization washing over him like an unexpected tide. I need you to be transparent. No more secrets, no hidden layers. I need to trust that you're willing to be vulnerable too. It's scary, Sarah, but that's the only way we can move forward. She nodded, the weight of his words settling like a warm blanket. There was something liberating about sharing these needs. It was as if each articulated desire severed a strand binding them to their old patterns. As they moved through a tentative exchange of commitments and expectations, Tom felt a sense of clarity emerging. Each word was an act of power. Every promise exchanged became a brick laid in the foundation of their freshly forged prospect. But even as excitement built, shadows of doubt lingered. Could these initial steps truly lead to a solid fortress, or were they merely crafting a facade over crumbling walls beneath? As the conversation unfolded, they delved deeper into their emotions, exploring vulnerability and the struggles they had faced. Sharing their insecurities felt raw, but it also illuminated parts of themselves they had kept hidden even in their closest moments. He expressed how he often doubted his ability to be a good partner, while she revealed her fears about never being enough. Through their dialogue, Tom discovered an unexpected strength brewing. He had been so focused on his own pain and development that he'd neglected how deeply Sarah had struggled too. This enlightenment shifted his perspective. Their journey wasn't solely about reigniting the flame, it was about weathering the storms together as equals. But just as the comfort of understanding settled in, Tom felt a sudden wave of distress wash over him. What if his newfound clarity and resolve were not enough when confronted with old temptations? What if the demons of doubt came back to claim their fragile truce? Sweat trickled down the nape of his neck as realization set in the very act of confronting emotions could be the precursor to unleashing past haunts. Tom's heart raced, sensing the precarious thread they were walking on. Here, at this intersection of hope and fear, the stakes could not be higher. "We need something more than just promises," he murmured, pondering the implications of their fragile commitment to each other. "We need to plan a way to hold ourselves accountable. Otherwise, we could easily slide back into familiar habits." Sarah's expression shifted from trepidation to intrigue. "What do you have in mind?" Tom took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "Let us create a roadmap, set regular check-ins, rebuild communication, maybe even a shared journal to express our thoughts without fear of judgment. We can't be afraid to voice what we're really feeling at every turn." As he spoke, determination tumbled within him. But a haunting thought loomed: were they simply painting over cracks that would inevitably reappear? The question lingered over him like a dark cloud. "Can we really do this?" he asked softly, probing his own sincerity and longing for change. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady yet soft. "We can. But it's going to take work and commitment from both of us." Tom met her gaze, both fear and courage warring within him. The journey was just beginning, but the uncertain path lay ahead, filled with both daunting shadows and the promise of light. What they uncovered would not merely reshape their relationship, but also redefine them as individuals. And as they made tentative plans for the future, Tom couldn't shake the sense of urgency that gripped him. Could he withstand the tremors of their past when they emerged, threatening to swallow them whole once again? The echo of his own briefly whispering fears remained fiendishly persistent. What if letting Sarah back in meant inviting chaos anew? The faint sound of rain pattering against the window pulled Tom from his spiraling thoughts. The rhythmic drumming reminded him that external conditions could shift just as easily as internal ones. He turned his attention back to Sarah, her expression still weighed down by the gravity of their conversation. "Let us go back to the roadmap," she encouraged, piercing through the thick fog of uncertainty. Her voice, now more vibrant, sparked a flicker of hope in him. "If we're serious about this, we need to outline specific goals. What do you see as our first step?" Tom rubbed the back of his neck, the tension there not completely dissipating. "Establishing a communication rhythm sounds like a good start. We can set aside time each week just to check in, no distractions." The thought felt grounding, a practical maneuver amid the emotional chaos swirling within him. He was no stranger to navigating rough waters. He had dealt with professional setbacks and personal disappointments before. What if we also incorporate something creative? It might help us process our feelings. She beamed slightly at the suggestion, her enthusiasm illuminating the dimly lit room. Tom chuckled softly, recalling how art had been a subtle backdrop to their life together. "A shared journal? Something we can both read and reflect on, smoothing the edges of our thoughts before we face each other." Sarah nodded. "I like that. It can help us articulate what we may not know how to say in person." As they explored this shared creativity, he felt a little weight lift. But a deeper realization scratched at the back of his mind. Their relationship was a fragile tapestry that needed careful weaving to prevent it from unraveling again. "I've been thinking," he began hesitantly, "what do we do when we hit a speed bump? Because I want to be realistic." Sarah visibly tensed, but took a steadying breath. "We have to create a response plan, something we can rely on when emotions start to flare. Also, be open about triggers, what sets each of us off. We must treat each other as teammates." Tom felt an unexpected warmth unfold within him, tempered by the anxiety of potential setbacks. He'd spent numerous nights fretting over their past. Now, it was clear that recognizing individual triggers could be the key to navigating their tumultuous paths together. "I've had my own triggers, the fear of inadequacy, feeling that I'm not enough," he confessed. "I understand that," Sarah replied softly, her eyes meeting his with an earnestness that made the air feel less dense. "I often felt invisible, like my efforts were futile. Working together, we can change that narrative. We can build a new story." As they forged this new understanding, Tom was struck by a new realization. He had concentrated so long on his pain that he had ignored the profound shared burden they carried. Each vulnerability shared tightened their bond rather than weakened it. In expressing their fears, they were building a bridge over the deep chasm that once existed. However, just as comfort washed over him, his mind crept back to the past. Memories of fighting shadows would storm his mind unexpectedly and lay siege to their progress. "What happens when doubts creep back in, Sarah? What is our plan when that happens?" She paused, brow furrowing in concentrated thought. "Maybe we should set up a safe word. Something we can use if the pressure rises too high, to signal that we need to step back and recalibrate. This process isn't just about rebuilding, it's about recognizing when we need to step back. I don't want us to get lost in the moment of our past pain." Her suggestion resonated with him, an unexpected tool for fostering safety in chaos. "A safe word it is," he agreed, his heart racing with both excitement and fear of the unknown they were venturing into. This self-created protocol felt oddly empowering, like reinforcing the martial walls while crafting a delicate flower garden simultaneously. As they wrapped up their strategic discussion, a weight still anchored Tom's chest. Would this plan hold through the storm? What if the reality of their progress paled in the face of old temptations? "Sarah, I don't want to rush this," he stated cautiously, changing the course of their discussion. "But I can't help but wonder, how do we know we want to just fall back into our old ways once the thrill of planning fades?" She looked at him, an understanding dawning in her eyes. "Perhaps that's the crux of it. The self-awareness we cultivate now has to translate into actionable steps later. It's about keeping the dialogue open and never giving each other reasons to retreat." As Tom stepped into the complexities of this newfound reality, a vestige of doubt nestled within the corners of his mind. Maybe they were crafting a sturdier scaffold, but the question reverberated within him like a persistent echo: what would it take for them to truly rise above the ruins of their past? The calm air crackled with tension, a sign that the fragile beginnings of their commitment had sparked a deeper conversation waiting to unfold. Little did they know, the challenges ahead would force them to confront not only each other, but the foundations of their very selves. Would they weather the storms together, or would they ultimately sacrifice their renewed hopes on the altar of old habits? Tom leaned back in his chair, the weight of their discussion still thick in the air. The rain persisted outside, its relentless rhythm mirroring the dread that brewed within him. He sensed that significant change was on the horizon, yet the nature of that change felt daunting, almost perilous. Could he truly transform himself and his relationship to something more authentic and resilient? His mind wandered to the echoes of previous arguments, the way frustration often trumped vulnerability in their past exchanges. Sure, they had patched things together, but was this time different? He needed to dig deeper, to uncover which layers of himself would need to be exposed and transformed. "Sarah," he said slowly, testing the waters of their evolving dialogue, "what if we each take a personal retreat day? Time to reflect independently, and then come back to discuss the insights we've gained? It could give us fresh perspectives on each other and ourselves." Her eyes lit up, a spark of understanding passing between them. "That sounds like a healthy approach," she replied, wiping her hands on her jeans. It'll allow us to explore the depths of our individual experiences without losing the collective path we're forging. In that moment, Tom felt a rush of determination. He resolved to dive wholeheartedly into this introspection, to confront not only the shadows of their past, but also those lurking within himself. The thought ignited a drive within him. What if this was his moment to confront his inadequacies directly? No longer would he dwell solely on past mistakes or allow feelings of inferiority to define him. This was about growth, an opportunity to reclaim himself from the pattern that haunted him. Certainly, what we do during that time matters, Sarah interjected as she considered the implications of the plan. Let us promise to be completely honest with what we discover. No sugarcoating or hiding behind the facade of being okay. Tom nodded, delighting in the gravity of their pact. Yet, underneath the surface, anxiety raged. What if he unearthed unwelcome truths that shattered not only his self-image, but their burgeoning bond as well? His stomach churned at the prospect. Those haunting fears prompted him towards further contemplation. He thought of past relationships and how they had warped him, casting shadows across his self-esteem. This was no longer about just improving their marriage. It was about redefining his identity, courageously carving out a space where he could exist freely without the shackles of past disappointments. Their conversations had shifted from superficial pleasantries to profound commitments to themselves. Tom realized that this transformation didn't just hinge on mutual understanding, but rather on individual resolve and authenticity. As they continued to brainstorm potential activities for their retreat days, ideas flowed freely. Hiking to places they had let slip from view, journaling their innermost thoughts, and perhaps even engaging in creative pursuits that resonated with each other's experiences, acted as the backdrop for their growing partnership. But even as excitement swirled, fear still lurked, uninvited yet undeniably present. "Are we ready for this, Sarah?" Tom asked, his voice a whisper that cut through the hopeful optimism. "Is it really possible for us to unearth the broken parts of ourselves without losing each other?" Her expression shifted to one of profound contemplation. "I think we have to believe in our ability to evolve," she replied earnestly. But doubt crept into her voice, revealing the vulnerability they both feared. It was then that Tom recognized that uncertainty would always accompany profound change. Instead of being paralyzed by it, they could use it as a touchstone for growth, a challenge to face together. The next morning, as Tom sat by his window, sipping coffee and relishing in the sound of gentle rain, he pulled out a journal. His thoughts poured onto the pages, a stream of raw introspection, revealing unacknowledged fears and hidden aspirations. This would be his tool, his shield against despair. With each word, he felt the tug of the past, but pointed his pen toward a future that would require courage not only in revealing his flaws, but also in confronting the strengths that he had long overlooked. But just as he began to find clarity, his phone buzzed with an unexpected message, a familiar name flashing across the screen, one that sent ripples of anxiety rushing through him. The past, it seemed, was unwilling to release its grip so simply. What power did this message hold? Would it forge a connection threatening the fragile foundations he was building with Sarah, or could it serve as a catalyst for confrontation that would ultimately set him free? Tom felt the air thicken with possibility as he awaited the unfolding of this unexpected twist. Tom stared at the screen, his pulse quickening with each passing second. The sender's name was a ghost from his past, one he had hoped would remain buried, forgotten within the dusty compartments of memory. Just the sight of it, a name he associated with betrayal and heartache, brought a tumult of emotions crashing over him. He felt anger, shame, and a twinge of nostalgia, each feeling intertwining into a dizzying spiral. What could she possibly want? His fingers hovered over the screen, debating whether to open the message that had the potential to dredge up everything he was attempting to leave behind. Would replying to her mean derailing his newfound mission of introspection and growth? Would it complicate his commitment to Sarah, who was a steadfast support on this journey towards self-discovery? Days had passed since their pact, and Tom could hardly recall a moment of genuine clarity. The weight of uncertainty stifled him, contrasting starkly with his desire to reflect and grow. Sarah's recent commitment to vulnerability shone brightly in his mind, and he felt a pang of guilt. Was it too self-indulgent to engage with the past when the present demanded so much of his attention? He flicked his gaze back to the window, the rain still falling soft yet relentless, seemingly mocking his indecision. The retreat he had so eagerly anticipated now felt overshadowed by this unexpected shadow from his past. He took a deep breath, steeling himself to confront what lay ahead. Tom lowered his gaze to his journal, pages filled with anxiety and hope. While he had externalized some of his biggest fears, the intrusive thoughts soon reached for his heart. What if this message stood as a reminder of everything he wished to forget? Near the edge of acceptance and resistance, he grappled with unanswered questions swirling in his mind. What if their short-lived romance had been insincere? What if she was seeking closure or merely trying to keep him tethered to a past he desperately wanted to escape? Or worse, what if she harbored information that could alter everything he was working towards with Sarah? In that pivotal moment, he recalled the emotional toll of his earlier relationship, how it had warped his sense of self and diminished his confidence. It had left scars that he dared not revisit, yet here they were, resurfacing as a stark reminder of how far he had fallen. His current goal, to redefine his identity, crackled with urgency. How could he step into a future laden with purpose while dragging the weight of the past behind him? His mind shifted gears. Rather than letting that energy consume him, he attempted to pivot. What insights could this moment yield? Embracing discomfort could act as a catalyst for resolving the internal struggle he faced. The equilibrium he sought wouldn't merely come from distancing himself from hardship. It would arise from the understanding that he alone held the power to redefine his narrative. Tom's decision solidified with resolute clarity. He would respond to the message not out of a desire to re-engage, but to glean understanding from the experience that had once broken him. This was a chance to confront the remnants of that relationship, to declare his autonomy over his own story. Feeling a surge of determination, he responded succinctly, setting boundaries that reflected his growth while revealing the clarity he had gained. His heart raced with mixed emotions, but he nudged himself to reject the wave of fear. This was a defining moment, not a setback, but an opportunity to reinforce who he had become. Before he could second-guess himself, he pressed send. As the message disappeared into the ether, he recognized that the past might remain a persistent echo, but he now held the reins to his future. Feeling the pressure released ever so slightly, he closed his journal. The stepping stone was set. Now the path forward demanded commitment. He still had to prepare for that deeply personal retreat day with Sarah, yet he yearned for her perspective on this latest development. But would revealing this message to Sarah stir more fear than understanding? Would the honesty inherent in sharing this revelation reinforce their bond or unearth insecurities at a time when stability was paramount? Tom took one last look at his phone, anxiety creeping back in, but accompanied by a fleeting determination. The door he had opened to the past might yield answers, but also a complex intertwining of emotions he hadn't yet navigated. He needed to prepare for the interaction. As much as he craved personal clarity, the fragility of his relationship with Sarah demanded equal attention. As he stood up, he felt that familiar tug of uncertainty. This road would be paved with both risks and revelations. Would he find the strength to balance his fear of the past with the hope of the future? Or would the very act of confronting this situation expose cracks in his renewed identity? The air thickened with tension as he braced himself for what lay ahead. The sun had risen to its zenith by the time Tom sat opposite Sarah at the cafe, their designated haven for navigating this vital chapter of their lives. The air held a unique tension, pulsating with a mixture of anticipation and vulnerability. Tom felt the weight of what he needed to disclose pressing heavily on his shoulders, the remnants of his past colliding with the promise of their future. Sarah, he began, his voice steady yet laced with uncertainty, I received a message from my ex last night. She reached out unexpectedly. The admission hung between them, and for a heartbeat, he feared it would fracture the fragile foundation they had started to build. Her eyes widened, curiosity battling the shadows of doubt that had haunted them both. What did she say? As Tom recounted the brief exchange, He felt surprisingly liberated, the act of sharing less about reliving past pains and more about reclaiming power. I didn't respond to reconnect. I wanted to face the remnants of that chapter without being consumed by it. He could see Sarah processing his words, her expression shifting from worry to appreciation. "That takes strength, Tom. I'm proud of you for addressing it," she said softly. The warmth of her acceptance enveloped him, solidifying his steadfast belief in their journey forward. But buried beneath their growing intimacy lay the rubble of their past, threatening to surface and disrupt this newfound equilibrium. "We've both made mistakes, and this situation has been overwhelming for me," he continued, searching her gaze for understanding. "But it's also an opportunity, one that reinforces my resolve to work on myself and us." Sarah nodded, and a deep breath escaped her lips, a surrender to the uncomfortable but necessary conversation. "I felt the same after our last talk. I want to dig deeper, to honest with ourselves even when it's uncomfortable." The sincerity in her voice struck a chord within him, igniting a flicker of hope. "Then let us commit to that. Vulnerability becomes our tool instead of a weapon," he proposed, internalizing the foundation they were building. They must face the truths of their history, holding each other accountable for the growth they'd begun to embrace. Their discussion flowed, punctuated by moments of silence, each reflecting the weight and significance of what they were embarking upon. As they delved into the intricacies of their past and present, it became clear that these raw exchanges were invaluable. They were crafting a story anew, a narrative forged from honesty, understanding, and a mutual desire to strengthen their bond. Tom found synergy in sharing his fears about inadequacy, which had long rooted itself within his identity. "I want to be the partner you need, but I often feel hollow inside. Can you ever truly trust someone with so many fractures?" Sarah reached for his hand, her grip reinforcing their connection. "You're not defined by your past mistakes, Tom. We're here to navigate this together. I often feel the weight of my past too, and it scares me. But we have to be brave enough to believe in what we're capable of achieving together." The morning moved toward afternoon, the cafe bustling around them, unaware of the transformative dialogue unfolding within its walls. Each moment spent in honesty unveiled layers of themselves they had buried over time, fueling their resolve to evoke change rather than retreat into old habits. More than defining the contours of their relationship, Tom blossomed with newfound confidence. The act of confronting his past, deciding who he was becoming, and acknowledging his relationship with Sarah was finally no longer a burden to carry alone. It became a shared responsibility, one that would shape the trajectory of their future. With each passing moment, the tension relented, replaced by a profound understanding of their intertwined journeys. No longer were they trapped by the ghosts of their past, but were standing together on the precipice of reclamation. Tom felt lighter, the shadows retreating in the light of their mutual clarity and trust. Later that afternoon, as they wrapped up their conversation, Tom felt a decisive shift in himself. No longer trapped by a paralyzing fear of vulnerability, he embraced it as the linchpin of their relationship's repair. He had achieved a breakthrough not just in speaking to Sarah, but in confronting himself, an evolution marked by the recognition that he could be worthy of love and trust despite imperfections, and that in sharing their flaws, they both built resilience. "I'm ready for this journey," Tom declared, meeting Sarah's gaze with newfound confidence. "Let us keep this commitment alive: honesty, vulnerability, and growth." A smile broke across her face, reflection of the light he now felt within himself. "Together, we can redefine the narrative of our lives and create a future brighter than either of us imagined," she affirmed. Tom knew then, without a doubt, that he had successfully reclaimed his narrative. By confronting the past, nurturing openness, and fostering growth, he stood transformed with a solid foundation on which to build a renewed partnership with Sarah. As he alluded to their plans ahead, Tom felt that he was not just drafting a path forward for himself, but also for the relationship he longed to secure, a journey toward healing and strength anchored in love, understanding, and shared purpose. When he finally stepped outside, the sun kissed his face, each ray a gentle reminder of how far he had come. With every breath, he inhaled the promise of new beginnings, appreciating the balance of uncertainty and hope. This was no longer the man who felt broken. This was a man ready to rise, standing on his own terms, embracing authenticity and connection within himself and with Sarah. He felt a swell of satisfaction wash over him, a deep recognition of his personal responsibility to grow and foster a healthy dynamic with someone he cherished. Tom recognized that true transformation extends beyond oneself. It thrives when individuals find the strength to confront their challenges together. This newfound path illuminated his journey toward reinstating his identity, while also forging an indelible connection with Sarah, one marked by mutual resilience, respect, and profound love. Now, it was time to commemorate this transformation. It wasn't just a chapter, it was the beginning of a novel, one adorned with triumph, honesty, and the promise of an extraordinary journey ahead. To everyone who connects with this story of overcoming and personal triumph, you need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories, where growth and vulnerability lead the way. Leave a like now, show your support, and help us feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and your own theories about this incredible conclusion. Your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Let us spread the message of resilience, strength, and personal growth together.